What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Next Pats podcast, coming at you from Indianapolis at the NFL Scouting Combine. We're here at the Indianapolis Convention Center, and we have a lot to get to in today's episode because we were able to speak to Eliot Wolf. I was able to speak to the Athletic's Dane Brugler, the king of the Combine. I'm calling him because of all the intel he's able to share with us, and we hit on some quote-unquote Mike VRABEL types in this draft, both at the edge position and at receiver and at tackle. And so a lot of great info there from Dane Brugler. We also want to share some of the intel we've been hearing from different sources across the league, all different sorts of roles, front office people, coaches as well. As you know, this is the NFL's one big convention of the year. And so a number of different people that we can sort of pick the brains of when it comes to what the Patriots might be doing next as they build their team for 2026 and beyond. But because the focus of this podcast is what it is, let's focus on what Eliot Wolf had to say and what he and the Patriots are looking for at some of these positions of need that we will be talking about for the remainder of the offseason. And I can just tell you, having spoken to a number of different people in a number of different roles already here in Indianapolis, and we're taping this on Tuesday afternoon, is that defense should be where we're looking when it comes to finding the Patriots' help this offseason, or as we try to project what the Patriots will do to help themselves, whether it's in free agency or the draft. Number one, their need on defense, specifically on the edge, matches up with where the depth is this offseason in terms of available additions. Free agency, first round of the draft, maybe even second round, guys on day two that can help your pass rush moving forward. Here's what Eliot Wolf told local reporters when he was asked what kinds of traits that he is looking for at that position. Here's what he had to say.
Pass rush, speed and violence, explosiveness, first step quickness, the ability to win in multiple ways. You can't just be an edge, run around the hoop guy at this level. There's some guys in college that are able to be successful that way, but you need different things in your toolbox. I think the guys that can rush with power are maybe at more of a premium. The guys that can, are athletic and can rush with power. So, that's why, everyone's looking for pass rushers in the league. It's not just going to be us. So, we'll see if we can improve that spot.
Really interesting to hear Eliot Wolf talk about speed and explosiveness, and you can envision what he means there. And they have a couple players that are on the roster, or were on the roster this past season in Harold Landry and K'Lavon Chaisson that fit those traits. That's their type with Mike VRABEL. You didn't hear a whole lot of two-gapping conversation there from Eliot Wolf and how guys play up against the run. No, they understand what this league is, and they value certain elements of playing that position over others. So what does that mean? Maybe in free agency. Well, I don't know. Could they be interested in a guy like Odafe Oweh, who they saw against LA when they met in the wild card round, and he gave Will Campbell all he could handle. And you see length there, but you also see explosiveness. You see the ability to rush with power. That is your prototypical edge player, really, in just about any defense, but specifically in this Mike VRABEL defense. So there's a name for you in free agency. In the draft, does it mean somebody like R. Mason Thomas, who might be a little bit undersized? We'll hear about him a little bit later from Dane Brugler, but has that explosiveness that Eliot Wolf is talking about. How about Zion Young? Maybe he's a little bit more of a combination of the power and explosiveness that you're looking for. Not as explosive, in my opinion, as somebody like R. Mason Thomas. Maybe not as fast up the field, but certainly has NFL-ready power. And so maybe he checks that box for Eliot Wolf and for Mike VRABEL. Maybe you could see them investing in him at number 31 overall. If they don't want to get to the draft without having a starter there, say they understand that they won't be able to re-sign K'Lavon Chaisson, or that Harold Landry might not be fully healthy next season, or the kind of guy that you could depend on to be fully healthy next offseason, well, then what do you do? Especially if in free agency, there's not a ton of playmakers available to you. We know what the NFL is now. Teams have gotten really, really good at not allowing their really, really good players to even hit free agency. Well, maybe you start talking about trades then. And would somebody like Nick Herbig, who's in the last year or going into the last year of his rookie deal in Pittsburgh, potentially be available? And what would you be willing to trade to acquire a player like that who has 1 year left on his deal, very, very cost effective because it is a rookie contract, but then you would probably be giving an extension to. That's a guy who plays the way Mike VRABEL wants his defensive players to play. He is violent, he's versatile, he's athletic. Another player gave the Patriots offensive line all it could handle back in week 3 when the Patriots lost to the Steelers. So interesting answer there from Eliot Wolf, and gave you a couple of options there in terms of names that the Patriots could potentially add. How about tackle? Does Eliot Wolf view tackle as a need for the New England Patriots? He and Mike VRABEL have committed to Wilt Campbell as their left tackle of the future. But what about on the other side with Morgan Moses? Here's what Eliot Wolf had to say when he was asked about that particular position.
There's a recent report about the Patriots possibly being in on an offensive tackle at Green Bay. And I was wondering if you considered offensive tackle a need.
I saw that report, and it's not true. He's under contract with the Packers right now. And the two teams that were linked with that particular player both drafted left tackles in the first round last year, so I'm not sure how accurate that would be. Is offensive tackle a need? Vidarian's a free agent. Thayer's a free agent. And Morgan is 35 years old, and he played awesome this year, but he's 35 years old, so tackle would be a need for our team. Yeah.
Okay, so let's add tackle to the list. That is a position of need, according to Eliot Wolf. Interesting there that he comments on the report that was made earlier this week about Rasheed Walker, who's an impending free agent, left tackle from the Packers. Patriots aren't interested. This is truly, it sounds like, a commitment to Wilt Campbell on that left side. But if you can find somebody, whether it's in the draft or elsewhere, to be the right tackle of the future, Morgan Moses, still very manageable number, coming off a very solid season. No reason not to give him the job to start in 2026 and beyond. And Eliot Wolf went on to mention in that conversation with local reporters that he did anticipate that Morgan Moses would be back, which to me is a good thing for New England. Maybe you could find a right tackle in the draft, whether it's Arizona State's Max Ihanachor, who I know scouts are really interested to see go through the positional drills during the combine this week and just see how well he moves. Basketball player, soccer player, born in Nigeria, came to football late. Massive frame, though, to go along with some real athletic feet. And maybe he's a guy, depending on how he performs at the combine this week, not necessarily in the athletic testing drills, although that would help, but in the drills, the on-the-field positional specific drills, maybe he can work his way up into being a lock first-round pick. This is a guy who's been mocked to the Patriots at 31, but maybe he ends up being a middle of the first round kind of guy. Blake Miller, who's a guy we're going to hear about from Dane Brugler. Could he be a fit as the right tackle of the future? So really interesting to hear Eliot Wolf just acknowledge that they could be in the mix for players at that position. Lastly, let's talk about receiver, because we're going to talk about this position all off season long, like it or not, Patriots fans, and what Eliot Wolf had to say about a true number one and the Patriots' need for a true number one. In particular, if Stephon Diggs, this is important for us to keep in mind, if Stephon Diggs isn't back, how does this conversation maybe change? Eliot Wolf acknowledged that they're not going to be talking about Diggs or anybody else's future that might be uncertain, but he did talk about number one receivers in their need, whether or not they have one for a quote-unquote number one. Here's what he had to say.
How do you view the need for a number one wide receiver? I think you guys had 7 different players lead the team in receiving in a game last year, but do you think the offense would benefit from like a traditional go-to guy?
I think you could look at it from a couple different ways there. Like, obviously having more playmakers is a good thing, so yes, we are looking at the wide receiver position to try to improve depth and at the top as well. But also, when you run your offense and you have one of these number one receivers, the quarterback can get in trouble by trying to force the ball to that person. So I know the way Josh has built the offense out, you're supposed to throw the ball to the open guy, and that's what we were able to do this year. And, obviously there's a hierarchy of players who play the most snaps on third downs and things like that. But to answer your question, basically, like, the more playmakers we have, the better we're going to be.
We hear about this all the time when it comes to the Patriots and Josh McDaniels' offense. And do you need that guy who's at the top of the depth chart and unquestioned at the top of the depth chart? And the answer is usually something along the lines of what Eliot Wolf said right there, which is you don't have to force the football to anyone. I think Drake May, and I know from talking to people behind the scenes, Drake May has done a really good job of not falling into that trap. And it's not as though he didn't know that certain guys wanted the football in certain situations. You can go back and watch the tape, and it's very obvious to see, whether it's Stephon Diggs or anybody else, when they don't get the football, palms go to the sky. And even though that happens, and even though Drake May is still a relatively young player, only in his second year, or getting through his second year now, he was able to avoid saying to himself, oh, golly gee, I better get to that guy next time I drop back to pass. So that is a strength of Drake May's game, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon, even if they end up bringing in somebody who looks like a quote-unquote number one. But that to me is a position of need as well, and we're going to talk about it right now with Dane Brugler, as well as edge, as well as tackle, and we're going to talk Mike VRABEL fits for a coach who's looking for ball disruption and ball security, who's looking for effort and finish. You know, what types of players at these positions, and let's get some names here. What types of players is Mike VRABEL looking for? Here's our conversation with Dane Brugler. Very excited now to have with us the king of the combine. It's Dane Brugler, ladies and gentlemen of The Athletic. The Beast is coming soon in April, the most comprehensive draft guide in the business. Also should be listening to his podcast, Building the Beast. Great job with that as well. Dane, thanks for being with us.
It's not Combine Week till we get together and talk some Patriots.
I feel the same way, and as somebody who talks to basically everybody within the city limits of Indianapolis over the course of this week, I'm glad that is how you feel about Combine Week. We just spoke to Eliot Wolf, and the first thing I want to ask you is about the structure of this draft and where it's deep and where it's not, and you have such a great 50,000-foot view of this because you're so in it from, day one to day 365. The depth of this class, especially at the top to you, is at which positions?
I mean, it's pretty easily edge and wide receiver. I would say those two positions, especially in my top 100 right now, 17 wide receivers, 16 edge rushers, and it's a fun class because they all have things that you can kind of pick apart about them, but they all have different strengths too. Like there's no Myles Garrett, there's no Malik Neighbors, the clear top guy at either position, but there's good depth. And it's ice cream flavors, they're all good, but what type of receiver do you want? What type of edge rusher do you want? And I know that's especially important to this team. We look at what their needs might be, what they might be looking at this offseason. Both those positions seem to be they could be in play.
Oh, no doubt. And just from talking to people, it's early in the week here in Indy, but the feedback that I'm getting, Dane, it does feel like, as somebody who loves talking offense and loves talking about Drake May and how to build around him and support him and do everything you can to help him continue on this arc, what I've been hearing back from people is defense, and specifically edge. Right. And so when you're thinking about bottom of the first round where the Patriots are there names to you that stand out as guys that whether you like them more than others or you feel like, that's sort of the range that feels right for them?
Yeah, what a difference a year makes. Last year we were standing here talking, Will Campbell, and look, like picking fourth in the draft, pick your four best players, you're going to get one of them. Now picking 31st, it's a much different story where you just don't know how those first 30 picks are going to come off the board. You're not going to have a player on the board, most likely, that you have a first-round grade on. And so how does that affect the way that you attack the position? Really like TJ Parker from Clemson. He didn't maybe have the junior season a lot of people thought he might, but that's okay if you're one of these playoff teams hoping he's still on the board for you. Zion Young, he's not going to win with quickness, he's going to win with power. He's going to go through you. He will create some speed to power at times, but it's all going to be setting the edge. And I think that's the important thing that we have to keep in mind for this Patriots team. Are they going to want more of an edge setter? They're going to want more speed. And if you can specialize in that speed rush, I think Coach VRABEL is going to be a little more lenient about how you hold up against a run if you're getting that consistent pressure with that speed. And so Cassius Howell from Texas A&M, short arms. He's not going to be someone that's going to make a ton of plays against the run. Now he's violent, he plays strong, but it's different when you're going up against NFL-level blockers. So how will he be able to hold up against the run in the NFL? You're able to stomach it a little bit more if you're getting double-digit sacks because of that edge rush.
I think you're on the right track when you're talking about speed. And speed, playmaking, ball disruption You know, these are things that Mike Vrabel values really highly, in addition to, regardless of position, effort and finish. You know, he has certain pillars of his organization that for him are just non-negotiables, right? Are there others? You mentioned Howell as somebody who's going to have some juice off the edge. Are there others that maybe feel like Vrabel types in that regard? We were basically at this very spot last year when you told us Will Campbell is a Vrabel kind of player.
Right.
So are there edge guys that fit those qualities of, yes, he's got some juice, and you know there might be teams that are looking at him as a pass rush only type, but he also has this effort thing and this strain and this ball disruption ability that Vrabel will love.
I think if they're willing to sacrifice size a little bit, or Mason Thomas from Oklahoma, you know, he's go, Energizer Bunny, like, you know, the intangibles are there. I think that'll fit. Now, if they're willing to bet on more upside, Keldrick Falk from Auburn, he's more of the bigger guy. Now, he's not going to win with pure juice, but there's the breadcrumbs of a guy that's putting together his pass rush. And so you're kind of betting on the upside. And I want to mention him because the intangibles, the leadership, the character, it's off the charts with him. He's a true junior, and he was the leader of that Auburn defense. And so I think that'll speak to Coach Vrabel. Now, these are the guys we're talking about at 31. If they wait until, say, the second round, say there's someone that can't pass up in the first round, they go that direction. Second round, a guy like Danny Dennis-Sutton from Penn State, I think that's a name to know. He fits that mold of a big edge rusher who can give you some pass rush, but he's going to set the edge. It's obviously the Patriots aren't the only team they're going to be looking for pass rush, and that's going to be something that will be interesting to see. The order these guys come off the board, because everyone's going to be looking for a different type, and then how many are left for the Patriots when we get to the back end of the second round.
Yeah, because it's a need for everybody. That's you know, one of the truths of the draft. It feels like every single year is, boy, I think they're actually pretty fortunate, Dane, where they stand, and just following your coverage really over the last few weeks, especially since the season has ended. Edge, you mentioned receiver already. It does feel like, you know, oddly, some right tackles. They've got Morgan Moses there at right tackle, and he's under contract still, and I could very well see him back, but maybe you need to start planning for the future there. It feels like there could be some right tackles for them near the bottom of the first round. So it feels like it's, for them specifically, in their roster right now, it actually feels like sort of an advantageous sort of group, given where they sit at 31 overall and their ability to maybe fill an immediate need right there in the first round.
Yeah, and, you know, we talked about receiver. You mentioned tackle, right tackle, Blake Miller from Clemson. He's bigger, longer than Will Campbell, but in terms of the makeup, it's similar. Like, this guy in 4 years at Clemson missed one practice. One. And it's because he broke his wrist. So, and this was like in the spring.
That's all. Broken wrist?
Vrabel somewhere, his ears just perked up. I mean, that's the exactly type of guy that you want in this organization. So, Blake Miller, if he's there at the bottom end of the first round, I think that makes sense. Caleb Tiernan from Northwestern, maybe in the second round if they went that direction. So, this is a tackle class that I like the depth in the first two and a half rounds, and I think there's a drop-off. But, again, another position that a lot of teams are going to be looking for.
Want to ask you for your Vrabel type maybe at receiver. Now, this is a position where it's harder to find those guys that are going to, you know, strain and finish. But I know they appreciate that in terms of, hey, are you going to be able to give us something in the run game? Can you block a little bit? Are you at least willing to do it? Are you going to fight for yards after catch? Are you going to get up the field as opposed to trying to dance, you know, laterally and make the big play? Is there anybody that comes to mind for you that sort of fits that Vrabel mold at a position where, let's be honest, they're not necessarily known for that kind of thing?
Right. Well, and it'll be interesting to see what type of receiver they really want to target. Is it going to be that big X? Is it going to be more of someone that could play in a slot, but also the Z? I think they want to, you know, if they want some options, there are some guys that have that versatility. Omar Cooper Jr. from Indiana is one of those guys. I think he's a former basketball player. Both his parents played basketball, and you see that with the way he plays, the body control, the ability to make guys miss, the run after the catch. Ball skills are fantastic. So Omar Cooper could be in that range.
And seems like a tough guy too. Maybe like we'll mix it up as a blocker and work in the middle of the field, right?
You see the toughness with the ball and without the ball, and I think that's important. Denzel Boston from Washington, you know, he's more of that prototypical big X who can get down the field, win with his hands. You know, he can really beat you at all three levels. And in as a blocker, he has the size, the strength, where he can wall guys off and really get after it. So if either of those two guys are on the board at 31, it might be tough to pass up.
Are there drawbacks to some of the names that we've talked about here, whether it's R. Mason Thomas and the size, or it's Zion Young, that maybe these players can answer this week, Dane? Like, are there, if R. Mason Thomas comes in and he's 245 plus, is that going to be wholly unexpected from you? And is that something that he might be able to do to improve his stock? Are there guys that can help themselves and the conversations around them, given what they do in Indy this week?
Because there's so many edge rushers, I think that coming here and competing and showing what you can do, you could potentially, because these guys are in stacks. Teams, they met before the draft or before the combine to get a preliminary draft board. That's why you have a frame of reference coming into the week. And I think at edge rusher, there's a lot of guys. And if you're looking to kind of separate yourself, if you come in and have a big week, and I don't think it's maybe necessarily the size, the length. We have a good idea of what those guys are, verified measurements. But during the drills, on the field, and not just the 40-yard dash, but I'm talking about the position-specific drills, if you're able to stand out, and what I love about the combine, sitting there in Lucas Oil, these guys go one after each other. So you have an immediate frame of reference of, okay, this guy was a little more bendy, this guy had a little more juice around, so you can have that immediate frame of reference, and that helps. The tape is king. That's what matters. The evaluations are 90% done, 95% done, but that last 5-10%, that could maybe vault you a spot or 2 spots ahead of another guy based on how you perform here.
What's the most important drill for the edge guys? Because our conversation will be out there for the masses before those guys work out. So for people at home that are watching at home, what should they be watching from a scout's perspective? Like, what matters most at that position in your eyes?
Well, I think first off, the 10-yard split. The 40 less so, but that first 10 yards, that initial get off. Obviously, you want a pass rusher that can get off the ball. So that 10-yard split is huge. And then with the position specific stuff, I like the hoop drill, just to see how much bend you have, how high cut are you able to use that flexibility and without losing steam, when you're moving. So those two things especially I love to watch, but I think there's something from every drill that you can get.
Last thing I want to ask you, give us a little taste of the types of nuggets we'll find in the Beast. And so I will ask you, to this point, understanding there's still a lot of work left to go into it, but what is your favorite background nugget on any prospect? Could be somebody we've mentioned here, could be somebody completely off the board that you heard and you're like, oh, this is gold for what you're trying to do, because you just see, and if you read it every year, dear audience, the kinds of unique little backstories that Dane has in his write-ups for all these guys. So what's your favorite maybe of the guys you've already done?
I'll give you a few. Arizona State corner, Keith Abney. 7th grade, set the 300-meter record, U.S. record, inline skating. And you can't tell me watching him that core balance, the endurance, didn't come from being a competitive inline skater growing up in his entire life.
Inline skating, we're talking, this is wheels, not ice, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Rollerblades.
Okay. Unbelievable. Okay, I love this.
He set a national 300-meter record in 7th grade. Won a national championship.
When you said 300-meter, I'm going to be honest, I was thinking running.
Right.
And you said corner. I was not thinking rollerblading.
I don't blame you for not thinking that. That's not what you expect to hear. And it's funny because he, if not for COVID, he wanted to continue taking it and see how far he could go. Junior Olympics and all that. He just grew up playing it 10, 12 years, and then football kind of took over. Another one, Jack Kelly, linebacker from BYU. At the age of 5, he won a national championship in BMX racing. And so he didn't play football growing up because BMX took over his life. So that's all he did for the first 14, 15 years of his life, and then got to high school, decided, let's differentiate a little bit. I'll start football, and hey, I'm pretty good at this too. I expect him to have some good times this week, Jack Kelly.
A couple great little nuggets there. You're going to get a little football. You're going to get a little X Games in the Beast. Unbelievable stuff, Dane. Thanks again for being with us. Always incredible insight, and I know our listeners, our viewers appreciate it.
Anytime.
Great stuff there from Dane. Always appreciate having him on. Let's share with you just a few quick nuggets that I've been able to hear during this week in Indianapolis before we let you go. Again, I would just start with this. Let's start shifting our mindset as Patriots followers, and in terms of emphasizing the defensive potential adds that they should be making. Edge, 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 edge. That's what I keep hearing from people when I talk about Patriots needs and what they could be looking for specifically in this draft. And it's a good draft for them in terms of the types of things that they need, especially, potentially with that first pick. This is a draft deep with receiver talent. This is a draft deep with edge talent. This is a draft relatively deep with tackle talent. So they could go in any of those three directions at 31 overall and get somebody who could contribute right away. But that's something I keep hearing is edge help, edge help, edge help. I know the Patriots themselves going into the postseason, they weren't sure they had enough pass rush to be able to beat the Chargers at home with a banged up offensive line. That was a concern of theirs for long stretches during the course of the regular season. So even if K'Lavon Chaisson re-signs, that to me is a position that the Patriots have to take a long, hard look at based on the conversations that I'm having here in Indianapolis this week. Stephon Diggs. I have not yet run into a person who says, go ahead and lock him in for the Patriots roster on 2026 and beyond. The number that he's at, and he's scheduled to make over $20 million in base salary next season when he's going to be 33 years old, combined with the off-the-field stuff, combined with the fact that, yes, even though he's getting further removed from that knee injury that is still now in his recent past, I haven't yet run into a person who feels as though it's a guarantee he'll be back. It's not to say he'll certainly be gone either. But let's keep an eye on Stephon Diggs and his future. I found it interesting that when Eliot Wolf was asked specifically about Stephon Diggs at the podium here today, that he was non-committal, I think is an appropriate description in his answer. Let's play that answer for you very quickly here.
Steph had a tremendous season. Again, the leadership that he showed was great, and these are conversations that we'll continue to have and weigh everything and talk about different things as we move forward.
Now, another player who I believe has a relatively uncertain future in New England, because I've had people from other clubs ask me about his future in New England, is Christian Barmore. It's a player who is about to early in the new league year, so mid-March, have $10 million of his salary guaranteed to him. That's according to Over the Cap. This is a player that they have to make a decision on. Do you want to continue to invest in this player? He has allegations against him where he's got an arraignment that is upcoming. It's not the only off-the-field incident that he's had in the recent past. As a member of the New England Patriots, he's a player who came into the league with some concerns about football character and maturity. And so, again, this is another player whose name we should have circled on the Patriots roster and just wonder whether or not he is long for Foxborough, Massachusetts. Great player when he's right. Great player when paired with another great player on the interior in Milton Williams. But as one industry source told me this week, an adjective to describe Christian Barmore would be quote-unquote unpredictable. And it's not just because of the off-the-field stuff. It's because of a knee issue that he's dealt with really since he's come into the league as well. And I think the team actually did a relatively good job of managing that. This year did not seem to be a huge issue this past season. But moving forward, do you want to continue to invest in the player, in the person, at a significant level in this Mike VRABEL program? I asked Eliot Wolf that very question earlier today, and here's what he had to say.
He's had a couple off-the-field incidents over the course of the last couple of years. I know this recent one is alleged. Is he the kind of person that you guys want to continue investing in?
Yeah, I mean, Christian, has grown up quite a bit, and we continue to help him with that, and he continues to want to make improvements in that area. So, yeah, he's continued to improve on the field. He had a little bit of a lull in the middle of the season there. He wasn't playing quite as well, but kicked it up again at the end, and continues to be a key cog in there for us.
How hard is it for you? And Mike has talked in the past about not all 53 guys can be Boy Scouts. You can't get to where we're trying to get with a bunch of good guys, I think is how he's put it in the past. But you do want a certain type of person, it sounds like, at the same time. So how do you balance those two maybe competing ideas?
Yeah, again, I think again everyone wants everyone to be be great. You never want to get the phone call from the security director at night. But this is the world we live in. You know, we expect everyone to behave and act like, you know, they're a professional and they're representing not only themselves but their family, their team, the crafts, like everyone. So, you know, as we try to build this thing moving forward, we're gonna continue to try to take good people.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Next Pats podcast. We're going to continue to have as much information as humanly possible coming at you here from Indianapolis. We have some great interviews that we've already got in the can that we'll be able to share with you in the very, very near future. Make sure you're keeping it right here on Next Pats, and we'll talk to you next time about all of the happenings with the Patriots offseason.